Is there a prompt? There are 6 emergency exits.
Hello, everybody. This is Ron, your captain speaking. We are currently 30,000 feet in the air, and we haven't even left the airport. We just lit the joint. Just kidding, a little pilot humor there. We like to have fun. Our destination today is Casablanca, Morocco. So everyone, sit back, fasten your seatbelts, and prepare for takeoff. We will be arriving in 6 hours.
What's going on, 7-footers gang? It is Jenna and Jarod. We are back again. We know you missed us, but don't worry, because we got some major news that is going to make you happy, like maybe the NBA on Christmas Day. Yeah, that's right. How you feeling, Jarod? I've missed you.
Oh, yeah? Well, I haven't missed your technical difficulties on on podcast day, but...
Oh, man, I am the worst, guys. Let me tell you that your girl, if you need somebody to help you with your technicalities and your computers and your whatnot, don't call me.
Nope. She's going to make them worse. She's going to make them worse.
I'm trying. You bear with me. I really appreciate you
No.
one.
All good. Listen, we had a nice little hiatus, little break. Man, the shortest offseason in the history of the world, because we are back and we're ready to rock again. And we'll get into it, but I'm good. How you doing out in the streets?
I'm good. Just back in PA for the niece's first birthday.
Yep,
Huge
saw that.
bash, a lot of donuts, a lot of things going on out here. You guys don't want to see me right now. Thank God we're behind this camera.
A lot of donuts.
Gotta love it. All right, we gotta jump into it here because the 2020-21 season is behind us, or right in front of us, actually, I should say. The 2019-2020 season is behind us, and we're not even having an off-season break. It's kind of a debate online. People are pissed. Some people aren't, because really the Lakers and the Heat are going to get a mere 71-day off-season, while everybody that didn't make the bubble is going to get like a 285-day off-season. So that, I was never good at math, but I know that that's not great. Okay? That's all I'm going to say. Now, the NBA and the NBPA, they voted to a reduced season of 72 games as opposed to 84, so not too bad, not too shabby. And they're going to start around December 22nd with games hopefully tipping off on Christmas Day. It's a huge change. We're going to get into the numbers, the salary cap, the luxury tax, all the good stuff that I don't understand, but thank God Jarod's here. So now, let me just preface that this move by them starting the season before 2021 saves them a pocket change of $500 million?
Well, look, right off the bat, the owners were pushing for a December 22nd start date, right? So games actually tip off on the 22nd, 3 days prior to Christmas, because the idea is starting then versus starting January 15th or 18th would save the league $500 million. All right, cool. Like, they need the money, no problem. The bigger situation is that the owners got some wins on this, and the Board of Governors, instead of calling them owners, the Board of Governors just voted on this a couple hours before we recorded this podcast today, and they accepted the new terms of that CBA, right? So for the 2020-2021 season, the salary cap's going to be at $109 million, and the tax level is going to be $132.6 million, which is the same as it was this past season that just concluded. Now, why that's a good thing is because, again, it keeps money in the owners' pockets, which, of course, these billionaires are always trying to do, right? Notice what I said there. These billionaires are always trying to keep money in their pockets, right? Like, if anybody could stand to, quote-unquote, lose money, it's a billionaire, I would imagine, right? But, that's neither here nor there. And in future seasons, the luxury tax will and the cap will increase by a minimum of 3% and a maximum of 10%. And why those things matter is because certain teams like the Warriors, like the Brooklyn Nets, like the 76ers, like the Rockets, right? They were going to be deep into the luxury tax because of the contract they have in their books. So having that smoother sort of luxury cap escalation is going to help them out tremendously, right? They're going to have to write a much smaller check. And the reason why the owners want to do this is because they lost money last year on revenue, right? From fans being in the stands and all that. And this year, even though they're going to want to try this next season, they're going to want to try to have fans in the stands. It's not going to be at full capacity like it normally is. So your basketball-related income, BRI, which you talk about all the time, that's going to be lower than it normally is. And why is that important? Because the BRI is the pot of money that everybody takes from, right? The ownership and the players divvy up the BRI pie, right? That revenue, basketball-related income. And so if it's less, that means everybody's getting less. So their goal is, how do we mitigate and end up coming out of pocket with less money, i.e. luxury tax, if we're not getting the same amount of money coming in? Okay, so that is what it is. That's where we're at, right? It's just basically billionaires and millionaires haggling over money, right? This is essentially what this is. Look, the league is back, and as a basketball fan and what we do for a living, of course I'm happy in a vacuum and as it relates to that. Look, I don't love the fact that the offseason was short. It's short, right? I mean, the draft, and we'll get to the draft later. Draft is on November 18th, next week, right? And then free agency starts on the 20th. You can start signing players on the 22nd. Training camps open on December 1. And then we tip off on December 22nd. That is a fast turnaround. Now, you're going to hear people say, oh, but Jarod, all you do is whine and compare about these guys. Okay, the teams that did not make the bubble, those 8 teams, sure. They are rip-roaring, ready to go, okay? Because they've had plenty of off time. They've been off since March. The other 22 teams, it varies, right? If you got to the bubble, but you didn't make the playoffs, all right, you had a decent offseason. If you lost in the first round, okay, decent offseason. Anybody who made it to the second round and further, that's not a great offseason to me, right? Now, yeah, you can be like, well, they had 6 months off, whatever, blah, blah, blah. Sure. But again, we're talking about having players be able to play and compete at a high level and mitigate injury risk. And what I don't love about this is, and again, it's about the money, and I understand we're cramming 72 games into this schedule. It's like, okay, instead of 72, why don't we go down to 62 games, right? That would have been a lot better. You're limiting the back-to-backs. Yeah, they're already going to limit travel because they want to slow down the spread of coronavirus. I get all that, but it's still not an ideal situation. And for a league that prides itself on being forward-thinking as it relates to science and all of that, or at least it's what they say, I don't love it. It's not great, but I understand why. They want to get back to a normal calendar schedule, right? Where they're off in the summertime and the season starts up again in October. I get it. That's what they want to do. So at some point, they had to do it. If it was going to be a shortened off season at some point to get back on an October calendar. Well, this is the one they gave us.
Right, exactly. I mean, it's not ideal, it's not great, and it's certainly, in my opinion, not fair for the league and its separate teams and its 30 teams. But like you said, they had to do it at some point. You got to do it. You got to get back on track. You got to get to the normalcy of the league again, because these guys are on a regimen schedule. And for the guys who couldn't have the off season that they normally do, these guys usually go on vacation. They spend time with their families. They work on their bodies. You see these guys who take months to, for example, let's see, Jokic, I think it was. He came back after months in the off season, and he was massive, so much more pound of muscle. So a lot of these guys' development is off. Their bodies are going to be off. And I'm very, very curious to see how they're going to manage the older players and the more veteran players, hence, the LeBron Jameses of the world and things like that. I don't foresee us seeing LeBron James a lot, especially before 2021 and even in early 2021. But again, you never know. And then the discussion with the load management is going to come up, and this and that and the third thing. So again, it's a huge, huge gap and a disadvantage for especially the Lakers and the Heat. So
yeah, no doubt. And I think, look, LeBron also, though, understands his role as sort of like the face of the league. So he'll play on Christmas Day because, that's important to the ratings and all that, and having him show up. Our team's going to load manage and do all that? Absolutely. That's what I would do. That makes the most sense. And so, this is what I think needs to happen going forward if we're going to see, quality play. And, the teams will be up to what they do individually to manage that, right? And it'll be a case-by-case basis.
Right. And like you said before, we finally have the dates, which the draft is coming up on the 18th. Free agency the 20th of November. Signing begins the 22nd. training camp the 1st of December, and then opening night the 22nd. So again, guys, we will be previewing that draft for you coming up in a later episode and segment, so don't miss that. But we got to talk a little bit here now about fans in the arenas. We all want to return, right? But the NBPA and the NBA are aiming to have arena suites open to fans at 25 to 50% capacity for the next season. Their ideal goal is to just get some fans in the arenas. Now, this is going to be under local protocols, so your games in California aren't going to be the same as your games in New York. So it's going to go state by state protocol, masks, social distancing, the whole thing. And they just really want some fans there to get the momentum back and kind of get some normalcy back.
And get the money back.
And, you know, and get the money back for sure. And if a coronavirus vaccine comes about and is developed, all rules can change then too. So I'm sure this is going to be updating as we get there. Fans on courtside will probably be 10 to 12 feet away, they say. So we're still waiting to hear about that. Season ticket holders, we're praying for you. But we're hoping to get some normalcy back in the game. I mean, what do you think about the fans? Do you think that this is too much, or is it not enough, or are they trying to go slowly here?
I understand why they want it back again, right? It's the money piece for sure. Don't fool yourself, right? That's a big part of it. And also getting back to some sense of quote unquote normalcy, whatever that means. Look, here's the reality. We are a long way away from a vaccine. I know that Merck recently came out, or is it Pfizer, excuse me, a new vaccine that is 90% effective. That's what all the headlines and everything on social media is saying. Like, people, you need to understand and read what that means. First of all, that is in the early stages of testing. Early. It is not in any deep, large population clinical trials, which is what you need before a vaccine hits market. That's number one. Number two, if a vaccine is 90% effective, that ain't great. That means 10% of the time, right, we're going to have issues. And with a virus like the novel coronavirus, keyword novel because it's new and we're still learning about it, things can change, things can mutate, and you're not exactly 100% sure of the efficacy of this particular vaccine. So we are a long ways away, folks, from a vaccine being fully tested for efficacy and being available for the general public. A long way away. That's number one. Number two, as we are seeing across the country, and really across the world, but we live in the United States, so let's focus here. Cases are rising everywhere. Everywhere. So do I think it's a good idea to bring fans into arenas? Indoors, mind you, right? Which is where we know the virus thrives and spreads. Sounds like a bad idea to me. I mean, that's just, I'm not an epidemiologist, but based on everything I've read, and that doesn't sound like a smart move. Okay, we're going 25 to 50% capacity, sure, whatever. Listen, all it takes is one person to have it and a protocol not be followed the right way. And next thing we know, we got little mini outbreaks, right? The reason why the bubble was so successful is that it limited people coming in and out, and you tested literally every single day. And you had specific quarantine restrictions and all that. That ain't going to be the same here when they have people, these markets and these teams in these little sort of mini sort of market games. Now, I understand we can't have a bubble for the whole season. I get it. But just look around and watch the other sports, right? Football, baseball, everything. I mean, college football is a disaster. Like, it's just constant, right? There's a breakout on every team. Every day you're hearing, oh, this person's got COVID. This person's got COVID. That's just the reality of what it is. And look, the NBA is basically watching the other sports and saying, look, these teams are able to shut down and then come back. This is what we're going to do. The difference, of course, being is that, with the NBA, you're going to have multiple games, right? Like within spans of time, unlike these other sports where it's once a week, which you might say you can probably control that a little bit better, right? But with 3 games in 5 nights, and again, you're not going to be traveling as much. It'll be the same sort of cluster of teams. But what are you doing then? It's spreading, right, among this cluster. Right. So I don't love it, but again, I know why they're doing it. It's like we're trying to get back to this sense of normalcy, but the reality is that's not a real thing. That's not a real thing. Like, we are a long way away from having this virus under control.
Right. And I was a little bit surprised to see the NBA come out with a decision this quick as to when they're going to start the next season, just because of, as you mentioned, the new rising cases around the globe. And this, I don't even know what wave we're in at this point, but coming now. So again, great insight per usual, Jarod. Love the feedback and thoughts.
And the other thing, too, is really quick before we continue. I mean, also for media, right? Like, I don't know what that means from a media standpoint. And obviously, the NBA, we're not we're not high on their priority list. But, I mean, me personally, I don't know when I'd go back into an arena. Like, you know what I mean?
Right.
Like, I just don't, like,
right.
I mean, okay, are you giving, and they talked about it, they're going to do some sort of testing, I guess, like at the door for these arenas. All right. Other rapid tests, hopefully they have, those rapid tests aren't always 100% effective, but the ones that they used in the bubble did seem to work out well, and there were no player cases that were reported, or that we know of. Every day they came out, no positive tests by players. Now, we don't know if any league or team officials tested positive, because those results weren't released. Not playing conspiracy theorist, but, we don't know. So, again, we'll just have to see what happens. And not to mention, with the holiday times, right? Like, people, look, I get it. This is my favorite time of year, but indoor gatherings with a bunch of family and people that's breeding ground. That's super spreader events, right? That's a way in which these things continue to trickle up. So we're a long way before we're out of the woods with this.
Definitely, 100%. And we'll keep you guys posted on that. Again, the news is changing all the time, every day, which is why we wanted to dedicate a large portion of this episode to catching you guys up and getting things going before we kick off the season. So let's veer away from coronavirus and uplift the mood, because we have to talk about coaching news. Now, Jarod, you know how we always talk about super teams and these dynamic duos and these new big threes coming out? Well, the super team foreplay right there is moving to the coaching staffs in the front offices, because now we're seeing more of these star-studded coaching staffs and things come together. And let's kick things off with the Los Angeles Clippers, who got rid of Doc Rivers, or parted ways, I should say. No disrespect to the legendary Doc Rivers, but now they have Ty Lue. Yes, the Ty Lue that brought Cleveland a championship in 55 years with LeBron James is now the head coach of the Los Angeles Clippers. And that is not all. Now, the coaching staff grew recently. We have Chauncey Billups, Ty Lue's good friend, for the people who don't know that. They've been waiting for a while to get together on some sort of coaching staff, waiting for it to kind of mesh together and for the cards to fall in the right place, and they finally did. These two guys are going to team up, and Larry Drew, he's finalizing an assistant coaching deal to join Ty Lue's staff, and I like what I see. It's a powerhouse. These guys already have a relationship for the most part, so you're not kind of putting random moving parts together. What are your thoughts on this? I think this is a major move. It's a different move, and I think we're going to see some good things out of LA.
Look, I mean, it's so funny. I think that's a hell of a staff. It's a good staff, a lot of experience there. Obviously, Tyler's been a head coach, won an NBA championship. Chauncey's been a player, won an NBA championship, been a broadcaster. Larry Drew's a longtime NBA coach. Ultimately, the question's going to be, have you solved the chemistry issues on the Los Angeles Clippers? We could sign up and have however many great coaches we have and all that. Have you fixed the problem that exists within the Clippers, right? That problem being the friction between Kawhi Leonard, Paul George, and the way that they were treated vis-a-vis Montrezl Harrell, Lou Williams, and Patrick Beverley, right? The sort of established Clippers players. Keeping in mind, of course, that Trez and Lou are free agents, so they may or may not be on this team come next year. Who knows? And also, to be fair, the Clippers were playing well and were rounding into form and developing that chemistry and cohesiveness pre-pandemic. And to be clear, they were up 3-1 against the Denver Nuggets, right? And had double-digit leads. So, what I think, and we talked about this on previous podcasts, what happened is because that level of connectivity and chemistry wasn't strong, right? The framework of it, the foundation wasn't super solid because it was building. When things got pressure, when the pressure mounted, it cracked easily, right? Because the strong foundation wasn't there, right? Maybe they learn, they build off that. That's what we hope. And then going into next season, if you're a Clippers fan, you think, okay, look, because this team was good enough, right? They were up 3-1 on the Nuggets. That should have been a Clippers-Lakers conference finals, right? I mean, so they are good enough to be back and don't have to do much. The question just is, do they deal and work through all of that and get themselves in a better position going into this season? And I like Chauncey and Ty and Larry. I think it's great. We'll have to wait and see what that coaching staff does differently versus what Doc Rivers did last season.
Right, very interesting, and I'm very curious to see how Ty Lue handles this team and the chemistry that they need to work on, and how he's going to coach these guys. I mean, we know he can coach a superstar, hence LeBron James, but there were different dynamics on that Cleveland team, and a lot of people said at one point LeBron called the shots, and Ty Lue kind of sat and oversaw and things like that. Again, we don't really exactly know what goes on inside that locker room. But again, I have so much confidence in Ty Lue. I like the guy. I think he's great. And glad to see he's doing well and healthy after he had those bouts of heart issues not too long ago. And also, before we close out the Clippers, congratulations to Paul George, who got engaged.
He sure
I
did.
think it was last week.
He sure did.
Yeah, so him and his longtime fiance, I think they have 2 little girls together, so good for them. Love that little island vacation ring action. Gotta love it. Now, before I go plan my next tropical vacation that I can't afford, let's move on to the Brooklyn Nets, because we have, as we know, Steve Nash in the head coaching position, and we have some moves happening here. As we know, the team that we're going to get to see is Kyrie Irving and your guy, 7 Kevin Durant. Now, talk to me about Mike D'Antoni here and the bunch of additions that we have going on within this coaching staff, although I don't know if Kyrie's going to even want the coaching staff.
I mean, by the way, Kyrie, that's your man, Kyrie, by the way. Who
That's right. I just got to put him in his place sometime.
Who said, I don't think we have a head coach. I could be a head coach. KD could be a head coach. I mean, again, that was taken a little bit out of context. I understand the overall point he was trying to make. Just, it's typical Kyrie, just saying too much. Look, that is a hell of a staff, right? Steve Nash, Mike D'Antoni, Amari Stoudemire, Emeka Udoka, Jacques Vaughn, Adam Harrington, Jordan Ott, Thiago Splitter, Ryan Forehand-Kelly. I mean, it's a hell of a staff, right? And I think Steve Nash, first-time head coach, smart to surround himself with men who have been NBA head coaches, right? Mike D'Antoni, long-time NBA head coach. Jacques Vaughn, before he was interim coach of the Nets, was a head coach in Orlando, right? So having those 2 guys who have head coaching experience there with him, and particularly having D'Antoni, who he played for in Phoenix, and Amari Stoudemire, who was his teammate on that squad, that is a connection and a level of camaraderie that the players are going to see, in particular, Kyrie and Kevin Durant. And that's the biggest thing, right? The reason GM Sean Marks and Steve Nash went with this play is to really show Kyrie the kind of connectivity and trust and togetherness those men all have. And it's important that he sees that, because let's be clear, right? He's the wild card of this scenario, in the sense that we know what Kevin Durant is like as a player to coach, right? Most of his coaches, they'll all have good things to say about him, even if they do have areas where they may have friction or they may butt heads, right? But with Kyrie, he's somewhat of a loose cannon. You never know where it might end up. So if we have that kind of structure and stability around him, that's a beautiful thing, right? It's hey, here's an MVP point guard talking to another point guard who, by the way, Kyrie, you never won MVP. So, right, Steve Nash can relate to him on that level. Hey, I'm a 2-time MVP point guard. Let's talk about this. Here's what I see on the floor. What do you see, Kyrie? Right? Different things like that. Because, again, it's all about managing talent and ego, right? That's what made Phil Jackson so good, and a variety of coaches who've had talents who are mercurial, right? You even if you cross and do other sports, Jimmy Johnson in football with the Cowboys, what have you, there is a way you have to communicate and talk to certain guys differently, and Kyrie's just different in that way. And if this unit and this crew is able to do that, which I believe they will, that's going to go a long way in how successful Brooklyn is as a team, right? And, of course, the health of those two players is going to be the most important thing. But assuming they're healthy, this is an interesting scenario in Brooklyn. Let's put it this way. Brooklyn, if nothing else, is going to be interesting to watch, right? Very interesting.
Mm-hmm. Brooklyn is going to be fun. I just have a quick question before we move on. Do you think we'll see the Nets playing small ball with the addition of Mike D'Antoni?
You know, I don't think they're going to play Rockets ball, Rockets small ball, but look, they're going to, Mike D'Antoni, for his issues as a head coach, and he has them, right? Namely on the defensive end. He is a brilliant offensive mind. And to have players the caliber of Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving, that's incredible. He can come up with a lot of innovative and cool things to do. Not to mention Spencer Dinwiddie, Karis LeVert, right? Jarrett Allen, some of the other guys they have there, Joe Harris. I mean, the big thing for the Nets is if you can surround KD and Kyrie with shooters, I mean, that's a wide open, I mean, that team could score a ton of points. And that's a beautiful thing to watch. So, yeah.
And they're not terrible shooters either. So,
no.
It's not like you're working with a Ben Simmons kind of point guard as opposed to.
No.
Sorry.
Just the idea that those two are ball dominant, and yes, they're excellent shooters, but they can also get to the rim and score in the mid range, do all the different things. So they need space on the floor to operate, right? So if you surround them with shooters, it's just you get them in 1-on-1s, and I mean, Kevin Durant 1-on-1's a nightmare. Kyrie Irving 1-on-1's a nightmare, right? Like that's not, if you're a defender, not what you want, right? So I think it'll be interesting to see what they do in Brooklyn with that squad.
Right. Same here. I'm also interested to see how Mike D'Antoni is going to fall into this role of more of an assistant as opposed to a head coach. So it's going to be interesting to see these dynamics. Speaking of another dynamic that is also extremely interesting, the Philadelphia 76ers completely have a whole new coaching staff, front office, everything makeover except for the team. So we'll see if it works. Daryl Morey, new president of basketball operations, joins GM Elton Brand, who just signed another contract extension per reports. So no kind of surprise there. And they join, of course, head coach Doc Rivers from the LA Clippers. He's excited to be in Philly. He's excited with the roster he has. And then the coaching staff that he has with him there. And again, we go back to what we say all the time. Is it enough with the dynamic duo that we have in Ben Simmons and Joel Embiid? Can Doc Rivers really kind of figure out what Brett Brown, former head coach, could not do?
So we talk about the Sixers a lot, and look, we know their pieces are ill-fitting, right? Like ill-fitting is the wrong word. They're not perfect fits because they're good enough, as we saw. I mean, not this past season, but the year before, they were a Kawhi Leonard $78 million bounce off the rim shot away from going to the Eastern Conference Finals, right? I mean, so again, talk about thin margins. This team is talented. Now, that team did have Jimmy Butler, right? So big sort of caveat there. But I've said it before. You have two players with the talent level of Joel Embiid and Ben Simmons, who are all NBA players on both sides of the ball. All NBA on offense and defense. And they're young, right? These are 25 and under. I mean, that's those guys, players like that don't grow on trees, right? You don't just, I'll get another one next year. Nah, you may not get another one for 10 years, right? That's just how this works. And so breaking them up that's tough. You have to be so convinced that A, I'm picking the right one, and two, that all my other moves and whatever I'm going to get back for moving the other one is going to help me move me into a place where I can compete for a championship. That's where Daryl Morey comes in. And Daryl is a collaborative president of basketball operations, right? Yes, he's the analytics guy. He's the we shoot a lot of threes guy, all that. But Daryl also is the president and the front office guy who knows you don't win championships unless you have one of those guys, right? And we talk about it all the time. There's 7 dudes in the league, right? That's it. If you don't have one of these 7 guys, the chances of you winning the title, highly unlikely. First of all, no guarantees you're going to win it if you have one of those 7, but you definitely ain't going to win it if you don't have one, right? Their hope is Ben Simmons and or Joel Embiid can turn into one of those guys. Ben Simmons a long way away, Joel Embiid also a way away. The question is, can Doc Rivers, can Daryl Moore, can they change the culture around Philly and hold those guys accountable, which I've talked about on previous podcasts. Young guys given the keys to the franchise too early, and nobody holds them accountable. Can Doc do that? We shall see. And can Daryl and Elton and the rest of the front office figure out, okay, how do we get pieces that better fit around if we keep them together, Simmons and Embiid, right? Tobias Harris, Al Horford, Josh Richardson. It's like, those pieces ain't great around that, right? And those contracts are tough. How can we move them? Particularly the Horford contract. I mean, and the Tobias Harris contract, right? How do we move off of those two things, right? And the likelihood of you moving one of those contracts, meaning you're going to have to give up, I would imagine, either Simmons or Embiid, right? In order for someone to be like, all right, I'm willing to take that on. Time will tell what the plan is there, but there's optimism in Philly because of the coaching staff and the front office. And look, like as I said, that team's talented. They got talent.
It's difficult when we talk about Philly because they're not bad. They're
Not
good.
bad.
They're
Yeah, they're not bad.
Their whole starting five is over 7 foot. Again, you just spoke about the duo in Joel Embiid and Ben Simmons. It is just, they got to figure it out. They got to get these moving parts moving better and gelling better. I mean, I hate to say it and be this ironic, but they could really use Jimmy Butler. However, it didn't work. And not to mention, I'm sure his stock went way up after his performance in the finals and the postseason. So, interestingly enough, I'm excited to see it. They definitely have a powerhouse coaching staff and front office. So
yeah.
This should be interesting.
I didn't even mention the coaching staff, right? I mean, Dave Yeager, who's been a head coach, Sam Cassell, who's been rumored to be a head coaching candidate, Dan Burke, Popeye Jones, Eric Hughes, Brian Adams. I mean, again, Doc's got a hell of a staff. But can these guys change things enough in Philly to get through to their two main guys, right? Joel and Ben, who admittedly are an odd fit, right? And we know why they're an odd fit, because one of them refuses to shoot, right? So, but there are so many things that Ben Simmons does do extremely well, right? And so, again, that's the tough decision that Daryl's got to make, if even he's considering moving one of them, right? It's like, man, yeah, I know about the shooting thing, but he does so many other things extremely well. So many other things. And that's the thing. We often talk about what Ben Simmons doesn't do, and that's what's funny for the internet and joking around and Twitter and all that stuff. Because, jokes greater than facts. He is an excellent defender. He leads the break like nobody's business. Excellent rebounding arc. Can pass like nobody. I mean, he's excellent. Excellent. He's been an all-star, and he made his first all-defensive team. And again, that's all that without shooting, right? So that's why everybody's like, oh my God, if he does, like, how much better can he be? Right? So that's the area where, it's going to be tough. If in fact, moving one of them is a thought. And then there's Joel Embiid. Look, Joel's a troll and he's, all those things. But man, I mean, guy's an excellent low post player. He can step out to hit a face-up jump shot. Excellent rebounder, excellent defender. I mean, he can do a lot, man. Now, will he start taking things seriously, being in better shape, all those things? Again, it's all the little things with these two guys. Like, it's like, hey, if y'all want to be champions and all that, it's time to mature. It's time to be serious about this craft, right? We'll see.
Couldn't agree more there. We shall see what's going to happen in Philadelphia. But let's talk about one last note here before we wrap things up. And it's a very important note, which is why we wanted to save it for last, to leave you guys to really resonate with this one, to see how well the NBA and the NBPA really comes together to listen to their players and the voices that they have outside of the game. This is what is so much bigger than sports right here, Jarod. The NBA and the NBPA, you guys know, we talked about it previously, they have agreed to a social justice coalition. Now, they are acting on their word, and now they have a group to advance equality and social justice within the league, and I'm sure that will come with a slew of more different things outside of the game that we have yet to know. And as we know already, the catalyst of this was the Bucks leading teams walking out of games and essentially a boycott within the NBA in August after all of the police brutality and the Black Lives Matter movement. So we have Adam Silver, who's on the board, and Michelle Roberts, also on the board, Mark Tatum. And then we have players involved like Carmelo Anthony, Avery Bradley, Sterling Brown, Donovan Mitchell, Karl Anthony Towns. And then Doc Rivers is also on the board. He also got a lot of attention during the Black Lives Matter movement because of his advocacy of everything and his extremely viral video, his tearful video, and which is very powerful. I suggest going to watch it if you have not already. But I would love to get your thoughts on this, Jarod, because I know we have had some serious conversations about this, and it's super important.
Look, the reality of this is that sport is a microcosm of the larger society in which it inhabits, right? I say that all the time. Just because these guys are millionaires and athletes does not alleviate them from what goes on in the larger world. And we don't have to look very much further than Sterling Brown, who is actually on this committee, this Social Justice Coalition Board. Sterling Brown, who was assaulted by police in Milwaukee, just recently settled his case with the Milwaukee Police Department, right? And so these millionaire athletes, if not for, I mean, sometimes it doesn't even matter, right? Like, they're still black men in America, which is still problematic in so many ways. And kudos to the NBA and the NBPA for not, making sure this was something important and not just saying, all right, we did it in the bubble, let's move on.
We're going to do it.
And we're going to, get back to business as normal. It's like, no, the players are like, have made it clear. This is important to us, and we're going to keep making sure it's important. And to get the board of governors and various owners like Steve Ballmer and Clay Bennett and Mark Lazary and Vivek Ranadive, getting all those guys involved who, again, look, that's a demographic that really doesn't have much in common with players, right? Those are old white men, right? With the exception of Vivek Ranadive, right? Like, so, I mean, it's important.
But this is where it starts.
No doubt. It's important that the owners and the players feel like, hey, the people I work for care about the issues that matter to me, right? And that's a tricky and a slippery slope, right? Because and we've done reporting on this, and there's been a lot of stuff that exists out there. A lot of these NBA board of governors, owners, right? They donate their money in political campaigns to parties and candidates that are not really in support of Black Lives Matter and equality and different things like that. So it's a very interesting dynamic here. And what I'm hoping it is more than just window dressing, and that it's, hey, no, we're actually serious about this and we're committed to do stuff, i.e. opening up like they did recently for this last election, various NBA arenas being open so players can go, citizens in those communities can vote to eliminate voter suppression. So again, this is something where this is what it means to be part of a functioning and working democracy, right? We want everyone to have an equal voices, and we want the concerns of the citizens to be heard, and we want ethical and fair treatment for all, right? That's what it means to be part of a functioning society. And that work is long and grueling and painstaking because of all of the ills that affect this country. And no matter where you are in America, and you can understand and appreciate what that means. And the work to do that continues. It doesn't stop. It doesn't stop at an election. It doesn't stop when we finish the bubble and we close up. No. The work continues. It is ongoing and does not stop. So again, kudos to the NBA, NBPA on this Social Justice Coalition Board. I'll be very curious to watch and see what type of change they're able to enact. And again, push the envelope forward more than, all right, we got voting out. Now that we've got voting out and people have elected leaders, how are we organizing to hold these elected leaders accountable for things they said they were going to do?
Exactly. And a last note here, Sterling Brown, you mentioned that they had settled the case in Milwaukee, and kudos to the Bucks who've stuck behind him and fought with him and for him throughout this entire case. But just to note again, Jarod, he was in a wrong parking spot, correct?
He was in an incorrect parking spot, and then the police in their response to him, right, used extremely aggressive force, right? Like, and it was completely unnecessary,
knocked to the ground. I mean, this is not okay.
Right.
So the fact that he settled this and they came to a decision that it was wrong, and that hopefully they're going to reform their police system there in Milwaukee. So I just think that that is such an important thing to say because such force was used for such a minor thing. And kudos again to the Bucks, and I'm happy for Sterling Brown. And this is a great thing for the NBA and the NBPA to put forth. So we can't wait to see what they do. So guys, with that being said, on that important note, go check out more information on the Social Justice Coalition. And we will see you guys in part 2 for a special 2020-2021 NBA draft preview.
Spent a couple years out here with these raps, trying to have a plan that we made come true. Applied to some jobs, but I ain't hit back. I don't wanna trap, what's a man gonna do? Chevy told me come